Today I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about podcasts and how to start one.
Please welcome Brian Kelsey. Brian Kelsey.
Technology has made it so easy to communicate your message, and there is no easier way than with a podcast. Now, what is a podcast? A podcast is basically just an audio recording. It's like having a radio show, except it's not live. You know, you can cut and you can edit and make changes. So I don't even like the term podcast. Also, I'm in Block Island, which is off the coast of Rhode Island, and that's g.love. Come take a look.
I got some ice tea, and if you like it, taste it. Come on over, man. Summertime is steaming.
Thanks so much for your patience, guys.
All right. We would like 2 Bloody Marys.
I'll put those up.
Thank you. The thing about a podcast is you don't need a lot of equipment to get started. You need a halfway decent microphone and audio recording software. And that's it. And a good idea. Yes, the podcast idea. Really don't have a show without an idea. So let's tackle that first. Okay, so what is your podcast going to be about? Well, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What do you know a lot about? The key is that you need to have value. You need to have a reason for people to come and to listen to your podcast. Now, that might be entertainment. It might be DIY. It might be relationship advice. Whatever it is, you need to provide value to your podcast listeners. Okay, so that actually is probably the hardest part of a podcast, just like a YouTube channel, and that is, what's the idea? Once you have the idea, then you can just start executing and start jotting down ideas so that you can consistently upload podcasts, because that is so key to try to do it on a regular basis. Mine, I try to do once a week.
Kelsey on the house, New York.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Kelsey, a licensed home improvement contractor with more bite-sized projects. So now, the easy part, at least to me, and that is the actual production and the recording of your podcast. So I've broken it down into three different sections: beginner, basic, and advanced.
Beginner.
So beginner is just using a USB microphone and plugging it directly into your computer, which actually you can get pretty good results. There are some good ones out there. They run around $100, and they do a fine job.
Basic.
Basic is what probably most people have for a podcast setup, and that is halfway decent microphone, couple $100, going directly into an audio interface. And you've got 2 channels there, so you can have 2 different microphones. It's a higher quality recording and more leaning toward professional quality rather than just like a USB microphone. I did a whole video on doing voiceovers, and I went over some of the stuff, so there's a link somewhere here. But audio interfaces run, anywhere from $99 all the way up to a zillion. So if you spend around $200 or $300 or $400, you're going to get a nice quality audio recording.
Advanced.
This is more where you're going to have probably multiple guests. You want to have call-ins, and there's a great new piece of gear that just came out. I haven't gotten it yet, but I've tried it. It's the Rode Podcaster series. Is that what it's called? The Rode Rodecaster. It's about $600, and to me, it's a really good bargain because it's very simply laid out. The 2 things that make this stand out as advanced is you have a whole sound effects pad. So you can have, a music bed playing, a jingle, you can play something pre-recorded, a sound bite, whatever, just by those touch pads. And on top of that, you can easily hook up your phone via Bluetooth, and that way you can take callers, which is not an easy thing to do. They've made it really simple. Okay, let's talk about the title. You can name it whatever you want, but make sure you search iTunes or any other place for that name to make sure you're not using a name that somebody is already using. Now, the description, this is really important. This is actually what's going to sell your show, and make sure that the description contains some keywords that are important to your podcast listeners. Now, your image, you want to make sure it's 3,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels. Really, you don't want to put too much information on there because it's going to be kind of a thumbnail, and if you're looking at it on your phone, it's going to look pretty small. And now, you want to find a place to host your podcast. Now, when you upload something to Apple and iTunes or whatever, you're not actually uploading it to them. You are directing them to where your file is hosted. So you need to find a host, and that's where you're going to actually upload your MP3 podcast. So there's a bunch of them. There's Libsyn and Podbean, and you can start probably around $5 a month for a simple hosting plan. And once you're all set up with that, you'll get what's known as an RSS feed. And that is the feed that Apple is going to read from to play your podcast. Once that's all set, now you can make your podcast in iTunes. So just open up iTunes, go to the store, enter the podcast section, and on the right-hand menu, select Submit a Podcast, put in your Apple ID. So it takes about 2 days for Apple to get back to you and have your podcast set up. Now, they may come back and say that there's an issue or a problem, but there's usually not, and if there is, they'll tell you why. And that's it. I hope this is helpful, and it's basically just like an overview of how to set up your podcast. Now, I'll go into further detail, more specifics in other episodes, but I just wanted to get you up and running, just to let you know kind of what it takes to have a podcast. And thanks for watching.
This has been a Brian Kelsey movie.